Welcome to the Goddess of Womanhood. I'm your host Kaya, an international Hatha yoga teacher and breathwork guide living cross-culturally. In this podcast, I speak with women from around the world about identity, health, culture, and what it really means to live as a woman today. These are honest, layered conversations inviting you to reflect, reconnect, and explore your own experience of womanhood. Welcome to the podcast, The Colors of Womanhood. There are some women in the world who feel like close friends even before you've ever met them, and Sarah Britton is one of these women. She embodies intelligence, joy, and a deeply natural way of living. And she doesn't know this, but somewhere towards the end of my 20s, I read an interview with her in a Dutch magazine. And this was around the early days of my new roots. And I remember really feeling something very clearly. She embodied how I wanted to live and how I was really longing to live, more connected to my body, to food, to intuition, and to meaning. Sarah is Canadian born, lived for many years in Denmark, and has traveled the world hosting retreats and sharing a deeply embodied approach to nourishment, one that resists labels and really honors listening. So, in this conversation, we're going to explore her journey through love and migration, professional unrecognition, the birth of my new roots, her evolving relationship with food and body wisdom, and what all of this reveals about womanhood, and especially when we dare to trust ourselves. This episode is called From Kitchen to Self, Women's Health, Nourishment, and Cultural Roots with Sarah Britton. Welcome, Sarah.
Thank you so much, Haya. That honestly made me tear up a little bit. That was so beautiful. And I'm so touched that I have been in your life for this long.
Yes.
And have, wow, thank you so much. That's really, really touches my heart. Thank you.
You've been in my kitchen for a long time.
Oh, wow.
So I hope we can start with the first question. You okay for it? Yes.
Yes, for sure.
Okay.
Bring it on.
So we're going to go back a bit to your earliest memories of food and body. And maybe
Yes.
if I would say it's in your teens and 20s, maybe it's already earlier. But what was really your relationship to food when you were growing up in Canada? And how did that shape your sense of self and body?
Yeah, I did grow up in the United States, which is not I was born in Toronto, Canada, but we moved down to the US when I was 3 or 4 months old. And I spent the first decade of my life in the southern United States, which is a very special place in the world, especially for women. Um, I think my earliest memories of food were very positive, and I felt incredibly lucky to grow up in a household where we ate together every day. It wasn't a special occasion. We always had dinner together, and often, if we weren't at school, we'd have breakfast and lunch as a family. And I think I really felt from a young age how important it was to sit around a table together and to look each other in the eye and talk about our days, and also, my parents just modeling what it was like to be in relationship and to have children and a family. And I had a younger brother as well, who I am very, very close with to this day. He's 5 years younger than me. So I was definitely the big sister. And my memories of food and eating together were incredibly joyful and very connected. And the food that we were eating wasn't actually the focus, it was more so the togetherness. But as I got older and my parents separated, I think that's when things started to feel a little different for me. And both my parents were working, and I know that feeding a family and spending time dedicated to cooking was really challenging for both of them. So a lot of convenience foods came into our life, fast food, frozen things. And I remember my mom, I tell this story, I've told this a few times, but I remember her coming home from the store once holding up a frozen lasagna. And this was actually like a pretty novel thing. You could get sort of like TV dinners, but a whole lasagna that would feed a family was quite new. And she held it up and she said, "I'm never cooking lasagna again." And it was like, for her, it was such a relief because that was a food that we really loved as a family, but it is admittedly a lot of work to put it together. And I just remember feeling like a little confused, like, oh, this was the end of something. And I guess for me, even in my little body, knowing that there was suddenly a disconnection from food because my mom wasn't preparing it and it was being prepared by some anonymous person or machine somewhere far away that I had no connection to. So I remember that moment being so triumphant for her and a little sad for me. I remember that so clearly. And yeah, I think as far as body goes, I got the message from a really young age that women's value is in their appearance and that being thin and being pretty and quiet was really important to be accepted and to receive love and belonging. And so I will say I've had a really long journey with body acceptance, and I think it will be a lifelong journey. I think I see it now as a real gift because it has informed so much of my work as I've learned to heal these parts of myself. I've been able to bring that into what I do. And I think it's gifted me with a really special perspective and a deep sensitivity for this topic because I know a lot of us grow up around with this messaging. And it is a huge part of my mission to tease these things apart, the way we look from our value. And um, I feel that the way these things are related, food and body, it's incredibly complex and very layered. And I'm still on the journey of finding, yeah, all these nooks and crannies within my spirit where, you know, these negative messages have really implanted themselves. And just when I think I'm sort of, I feel clear of it, I feel free, then there's a whole other level, especially as I age naturally and I embrace getting older. Every year, every decade presents a new set of challenges and the way I look at myself. And so, yeah, it's a big question. And I think because when I was young, I learned or I was taught that our appearance really matters as women and that our desirability is so important in order to be loved. It's been a challenge for me. Yeah.
Hmm. Thank you for sharing that. If you're talking about the different layers, that are still there. I mean, you practice yoga, you teach yoga as well. Is that how do you move through those layers, and how do they, maybe change every time, especially
Yeah.
from you, and as that you live with such a mission basically.
Yeah. I feel deeply connected to my purpose. And again, I think it really stems from everything I picked up as a child. A big part of my personal practice is deep listening, and I create a lot of space in my life for silence and yeah, space. I realize that growing up in a traditional education system where you are kept busy a lot and you're continuously thinking, problem solving, and then, even after school, being in after school activities and weekend activities, I didn't grow up with a lot of value placed on unscheduled time and spaciousness. And I really discovered early on that that's where my creativity comes from, is from this openness, the unscheduledness. I have a really deep connection with nature, and I have to be with her every single day. And to sit with the moment, to be in presence, to be in deep presence with nature, um, that's where all of these layers start to reveal themselves. And so I know that if I keep my mind very busy, and in periods of life where that happens naturally, you're just busy. And I also love being productive and I love creating things, but I also need to remind myself to slow down and on a daily basis take space to just be quiet and listen. And sometimes that is sitting still, and sometimes that's walking. I walk a lot, and my walking really is my meditation and where I can process things. There's something about movement for me that helps me process and reflect. And I find when I'm sitting still, I don't have the same level of realizations coming to me, but I also love to sit in deep silence in the forest. um, but that becomes more of a spending time in the void versus having space to reflect and be creative from a mind space. So, yeah, I just have to make sure that I have that in my practice. And then, gosh, everything just reveals itself through that spaciousness. And so I've worked through the most challenging moments of my life through that stillness and quiet.
I think many women would crave that, right? To be able on a daily basis to do that.
Well, I think we all do. I think it's part of our humanness, and a lot of us don't make space for it.
Yeah.
And it's something that I see a lot, especially with the women I hold retreat with, is, we do create a lot of openings for women to drop into themselves. And their question afterwards is, how do I do this at home when I go back to my really busy life? And of course, I can't answer that question. It looks different for everybody, but I really think it's something to prioritize. Women are deeply intuitive feeling beings, and if we don't allow space for that quiet, our whole day can go by, and then we feel disconnected to ourselves. And I think we are in our true purpose and power when we're able to really listen, and the listening does require space. And so if it's giving up half an hour of TV or scrolling on your phone, which is hard because that sometimes is a wonderful way to unwind, I think we also have to reframe what unwinding looks like. And I think even though there's probably resistance to it, once the practice begins, it really does gain momentum. And then you'll suddenly be craving that as opposed to looking at a screen or even reading a book or talking to a friend. I mean, if it's not woven into your life yet, it might feel difficult and to make space for it. But oh gosh, everything comes from there. I think our relationship with ourself, it's the most important thing we have. Everything stems from that. We really can't show up for others unless we are really there for ourselves. I think another common theme I see with women is this martyrdom and putting others before ourselves. And that works up to a certain point. And it's so beautiful to be self-sacrificing. But I think that's another lesson that I've tried to undo as a woman, is that actually when I am full, when I am fulfilled in myself and I've made that space to really listen to myself, I can give to others in an overflowing way. And it's hard to make that shift, from that mindset of, oh, I just want to give and give and give. But really, we're not doing anyone any favors because we're going to burn out and then we're of use to no one. So it really does come from ourselves first.
Mm. You spent some time on an organic farm in Arizona, and that was a
Yes.
profound turning point. That was also in that interview that I read, and that was what I found so fascinating. Maybe you can tell just a little. Maybe many people know the story about the organic farm, and maybe just give a little bit of that, but then also more what inner shifts really happened there, and especially after the time then from your parents divorced, and what you were just sharing.
Yeah,
And
sure.
what happened there beyond nutrition, and how you felt in your body, how you saw yourself, how you understood nourishment, and also really nourishing yourself, and also the world that you've been growing up in so far.
Yeah, wonderful question.
Mhm.
That was definitely the turning point of my young life. I was 23 when I went down to work on an organic farm in a experimental community in the desert in Arizona, the Sonoran Desert. And it was a project that was started in the early 70s by an architect called Paolo Soleri, who believed that the way America was being developed with this sprawl was unsustainable. And so he really thought about looking at designing a city the way nature develops, which is getting smaller and more complex as it grows, not expanding outwards. And so all of his cities are designed um, just it's fascinating. I mean, I could talk about his work forever, but anyway, I went down to work on the organic farm for 5 weeks, and I ended up staying for about a year because it changed everything. I mean, my relationship to food at that point, I was a vegetarian, but I didn't know anything about nutrition. And when I started working on the farm and eating what we were growing, what was seasonal, like picking a tomato, and, I got there in September, and I mean, it was just harvest season. And the food, like, I had never tasted food like this before. It was so alive, like, literally, it was alive. I had just picked it. The flavors, the juice, like, I felt like I could taste the sunlight in it. I could taste the soil. I could taste the nutrients. And like I get goosebumps talking about it because it blew my mind and heart so wide open to be eating vital foods for the first time in my life. I'd only ever had tomatoes, that had been shipped from Mexico or whatever. I mean, it just local foods were not in the conversation at that point. And again, my parents were relying a lot on, convenience foods at the time. And so, yeah, I mean, suddenly I had a connection to the food too because I was a part of nurturing it. And that made me feel connected on a psycho-spiritual level to what we were growing. And as I came in as like a pretty intense sugar addict and knowing very little about nutrition, and then noticing my taste buds changing. This was the first thing I noticed was the taste of sweetness became so different. The taste of sweetness from a tomato versus a chocolate bar. I mean, I started slowly giving up sugar because we were in the middle of the desert. There's nowhere to go to buy anything. I mean, you're stranded out there. And the first week was pretty challenging. I went through like such a horrible withdrawal of processed foods and like just missing high amounts of salt and sugar and fat. But slowly, as that sort of started to diminish, uh, and I was just eating what we were growing, it was, it was just a true awakening. I I felt like I had just woken up, and um, I sort of had this low level exhaustion all the time and kind of a malaise. Like I just didn't really care about anything. And what was so wild was when I started eating this way, I started caring about the food so much, and I started caring about the way we were interacting with the farm and the animals and the entire environment. Like just all these puzzle pieces started coming together for me. And I felt like it was the start of something really huge for me. And I had no idea what it would be. And here we are, so many years later. I never imagined that it would take me to where I am, but life is so amazing that way. And every every step is so important, even if it doesn't make sense. I remember my parents really questioning why I would go down there. I just graduated from design school and suddenly I'm working on a farm. Like they were like, this is very confusing. And I said, it's confusing for me too, but I'm just following my intuition. And I was only 23, but I was sort of slated to work, at a design firm or an architecture firm, which I did get a job for right away. And then I was like, this is not for me. It just did not feel in alignment. And I still had so much I wanted to explore and discover within myself. And so this was the most perfect opportunity because it was a community of about 100 people who were living on the fringes, who were not, they were not accepting of the system that was in place, government wise, patriarchally speaking. I mean, there was just nothing old. It was really about like how can we create a society that supports all people, um, no matter their income, race, religion, ideologies, how can we come together as a people and how can we deeply nourish ourselves through this food, through the architecture, which I've always had a deep fascination in, like the way architecture shapes our reality and our relationship to space and our actual feelings. So I'm in this place that is just awakening my mind so much. I'm with a lot of much older people who have been living for decades more than me and in societies that just were not working. So it was a very multifaceted awakening, awakening, not just with the food, but the food opened my mind to receive all of these other influences that I had never been exposed to, especially growing up Christian. And it was just fascinating. And talk about layers. I mean, I felt like I was shedding so many layers and at the same time receiving so many beautiful ideas about what it means to be a human being on planet Earth. I got a connection to where I live for the first time. I didn't really even consider myself an animal in the world. You know, I was like a human being, just sort of a cog in the machine of this like system that I had never chosen. And then suddenly to understand that I had agency and that I could think and feel a different way, and that I was living with people who were really challenging these systems was so pivotal for me at that age. And, you know, again, it deeply changed my life and my way of being. And I'm so grateful that I was guided there. I mean, it was a complete kind of fluke that I ended up in this place, but it was revelatory on
Mm.
physical, mental, emotional, spiritual levels that
Mm.
I cannot describe within this podcast time. Yeah.
But you can
It
still
was
continue a bit.
it was just,
Go
yeah,
on.
it was amazing. Yeah, it was deep.
So this has been what you said, just such a pivotal point shaping your identity. I mean, identity is obviously also kind of very, I think, changeable, right? Yes.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but for many women, I think food and body talk becomes so much wrapped up in identity. How do you look at that? How do you, I mean, also from all the conversation you have with the women within your community, now how does that, yeah, what comes out and how do you look at it?
About food and body
Yeah.
or identity. And
Yeah, it's the combination of it. Really just the
yeah,
oh, especially for women.
I need to pause and just let this one simmer because it's such a big
Let me
question.
otherwise rephrase it. Where do you think it originates from that food and body have become so wrapped up in identity and control, especially for women?
Yeah,
Mm.
control. Well, again, it stems from this idea that women's value is in their appearance and your desirability is your currency
Mm.
as you move through life. And food, of course, plays such a role in that because food is the biggest impact. Like it has the biggest impact on how we look. So, you know, the choices we make around food ultimately impact our appearance. And so you have to have this very controlled relationship with food in order to have the appearance that you want, in order to be desired. And then, therefore, in order to belong, and love is belonging. And so
Can I
it really,
pause there for a second? Because,
sure.
because can you just explain a little bit more the relationship parents and food? You know, you've explained obviously your situation, but I'm just curious to understand a bit more how you yeah how you expand that for you know for so many more people.
Yeah, I mean, our primary goal as children, not goal, but like the thing we need, our primary need as children is belonging because that equals safety and survival. And so if you are taught that the way you gain belonging is this one way, and I'd say it's different for boys and girls, culturally speaking, in the way I grew up. This is not global. You know, I spent almost a decade in Denmark, and I feel like the culture there is so different. The way I grew up in the southern United States and then in Canada, the messaging I got was your value as a woman is in your appearance. And if you're not beautiful, then you're not valuable. And as a child, to get that messaging means if you're not beautiful, you will not survive because belonging and love is safety. And I saw it firsthand. I saw kids that were, you know, I guess deemed by other people to not be cute or pretty or whatever, and they were not as valuable. And that's an insane message to witness. to see in real time, to see your friends rejected. And it could be a simple thing like you're not invited to the birthday party because you don't have the right clothes. You're not invited to the sleepover because, you know, you're not wearing the right thing, or you're not acting in the way that you want, or you're just not pretty enough. Like that's it. And so as a kid, then all you're striving for is to be accepted. So you receive love and belonging, which I equated to survival, to safety, and like being accepted. It's really deep.
Mm, mm,
And so the food choices for me, once I was aware of the impact food was having on my appearance and my weight, um, control had to come in, because I realized that the choices I was making were not making me acceptable to people. Like
mm,
I gained weight when I was probably starting around 14. I started gaining weight, and um oh gosh, when I look back, it was a normal, a completely normal thing. Like before getting my period, before menstruation, a lot of girls put on
mm,
weight, and it's just before they get their growth spurt, and it's their bodies. I mean, women's bodies are so amazing, the way they fluctuate in weight, in size, and shape. I mean, it's so miraculous. And again, like most of the medical systems we have in place and advice that has been given to women, and it is changing, but it's been based on males' bodies forever, because women are so complex. They're difficult to study and understand. And anyway, this is all to say that when I started gaining weight as a young teenager, I became less valuable. And I knew that.
mm,
And I knew that. And it scared the living daylights out of me, because if I'm not valuable, then I'm not going to belong. And if I don't belong, I won't survive. This is like deep biological instinct. Belonging equals survival. And, it's not necessarily a physical survival, but an emotional survival, at least. It's still deeply rooted in our biology that if we don't belong to a group on a psychological level, then yeah, we will be excluded, and we will not survive. But um, even just, I mean, I think everyone knows the feeling of being left out. And I think in your teenage years, that's an especially vulnerable time for everyone, no matter their gender. And um, it just makes me so sad to remember those first realizations of needing to control my weight. And as early as 11, I was told when I was 11, I needed to lose 15 pounds. And that voice has been in my head my whole life. And I've been able to use that to heal. It was a seed that was planted that's really helped me, again, gain more perspective and compassion for women, for anybody. I don't want to gender it too much, but I also know that culturally speaking, it is different. Um, I mean, imagine telling an 11-year-old to lose 15 pounds. It's
mm,
it's crazy, but that's what I was told. And so um, it's played a huge part in my life, and just informing my perspective on the world, and trying to dismantle it for
mm,
other women and upcoming generations. I just would love to see that end in my lifetime, because the way we look is the least interesting thing about us. It's just not important. It's
mm,
not. And I think feeling good, I think women who feel good, who are embodied, they radiate, they radiate. That is the most beautiful thing about a woman, is her confidence, her assuredness, her her being and her purpose. And I wish I had been taught that. And it's something I've learned along the way, thank goodness.
mm,
Um, but yeah, it's still pervasive, and a lot of women still uphold that, that our appearance is just so important. And anyway, I think I'm digressing a little bit, but food, control, the body. I mean, it's all interrelated, and again, it all stems back in my mind to a feeling of safety, belonging, love, and survival,
mm,
and what our value is.
mm, mm. It's interesting. Thank you for explaining it more indeed with the relationship with the parents and what you say. You know, it can be really kind of culturally different because I think I absolutely agree and also experience indeed. You know how you look at your parents and obviously the examples that they're giving, and a lot indeed goes to how they are looking after this after themselves, right? In which food and drinks, you know, you play a big role. Um, yeah, so it's but I think indeed in terms of cultures, there will be a lot of differences within that. But I find it I find it very special to hear from you how this, you know, how this has been so big in your growing up, but then as well how it has, you know, I think you and I probably have kind of found the same kind of thinking of that particular things might happen for a reason in order to get to what your purpose is, even though it's not not necessarily an easy path to be on.
No, but I think we are gifted what we need. I think we all came here with a real
Mm.
purpose
Yeah.
and a message to share. And, you know, for a long time, I felt really burdened by all of these things that I picked up, all these messages, but I know I would be in a really different place
Mm.
spiritually and professionally if it weren't for those messages. And I really see them as gifts. I think our lives all illuminate something very special. They're all very different for each of us. And this just happened to be one of mine.
Mm. Mm.
And yeah, it's been totally unpleasant. It's, it's really uncomfortable. But I don't think anything, yeah, I don't know. It's also taught me to really see the challenges in life as opportunities, and they're different for everyone, and this is one of mine.
Mm.
It's one of
And
my
how,
challenges. It's one of the best opportunities I've been gifted.
yes.
Yeah.
And how can you speak with your parents about it now? I mean, they, you know, you are, you know, really who you are. And I mean that is in your whole life. So they obviously know that what you've just been sharing.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I have to be sensitive. They might be listening now too. Um, I will say I love my parents very, very much, and we're very close. I just spent a week with them down in Mexico, and it was amazing. And they did the best they could with the information they had. And I also really see their evolution from their families and what they grew up with and the messaging they received when they were children. Um, my mom, I mean, yeah, she was really taught that beauty equals thinness equals love and belonging. And so that was passed to me for sure. And we've had to have some really hard conversations over the years about my own boundaries around it. And um, especially as my body changes and fluctuates, um, I've had to tell my mom that the conversation about my appearance is off the table.
Mm.
And I would also appreciate her not commenting on other people's bodies, which is, you know, a deep projection, and it's a reflex, right? We tend to compare ourselves to other people so we can understand where our place is in the value scale. And so when we look at another woman's body, face, clothes, whatever, there is a vigilance going on, again, a survival mechanism, because we're saying, how does she look and how does she measure up to me? How do I measure up to her? What's the comparison? Am I more attractive, less attractive? Am I going to belong or not? And so we tend, what I've noticed with people who do place a lot of judgment on other people's appearance, it's just them trying to figure out where their value lies
Mm.
in relationship to that person. And if they can find something that's wrong with that person, then it automatically makes them better and therefore safer. And again, it's so deep. It's not logical, but it's a deep biological need for us to understand our place in the hierarchy of things. And a huge part of my healing has been letting go of that and just not placing any value on the way people look. And when you approach the world from that perspective, when you can affirm in your body that you are safe no matter what, not because someone is in your mind better or worse, if you can let go of that, wow, gosh, I mean, everything just changes. And so I think I think it remains an action journey for my mom. And I I see how far she's come, and the conversations will probably continue forever. She's still very critical of her own body. And I think at 73, to see her putting herself down is really heartbreaking for me. Um, because I really endeavor to be free of that at that age. I mean, I endeavor to continue to be free every day from that. And I wish that for all people, that they can just relax
Mm.
and be themselves. When we think about the time and energy that is used for these thoughts and feelings, I just think about how much time is wasted on something that really has no consequence at the end of the day. But again, because it's so deep in our biology and our this cellular need to survive, if that's what it's attached to, which in my mind, for me, it is, then it, it 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 takes a lot, and it takes a lot of, again, this is where like having spaciousness in your day to drop into yourself and like listen to your thoughts. We cannot underestimate every cell of our body is listening to everything we think and say about ourselves. And our body is responding to those thoughts and feelings in every moment. And so when you catch yourself saying, oh, you know, I'm getting old, or I look old, or I've put weight on, or I feel lousy about the way my thighs look, or stomach, or whatever, chin. Everything is listening to that, and our body's responding to that. And if you believe in vibration, if you believe in energy, and we are energetic beings, science proves this, think about the vibration that you're sending to your entire being. And that's what I mean about a woman who's in her power, in her confidence, when she knows her worth that's coming from the inside. That is a magnetic force. You feel it. It has nothing to do with how she looks. And my wish for all people is that they can get to a place where they really recognize that in themselves, that their value is coming from their inner compass of knowing that they're so valuable just as they are, and that as they grow and they continue to become more of themselves, that that is their true gift, and that every single person as an individual has so much to share with the world. And it's not about conforming and looking like someone else, being like someone else. Like, our value lies in our uniqueness. And so when we can navigate our life energetically from that place of knowing, that's where real confidence and real beauty comes from.
Thank you for sharing this. I'm really happy that you can say this all. I mean, this listening to you, looking at you, you really feel it everywhere that it really comes from deep down. Yeah, and
Thanks for listening.
I'm also if I just one last question about is because I mean it takes quite a lot to step up to your mom. I think in general for all of us, and I mean mother-daughter's relationships are tend to be a bit more complex than mother-son. Um, how does your mom then kind of value you now, and especially that you kind of stood up to her and said, you know, this is not continuing to me or for me.
Yeah. Um, I think it's also it's funny to have roles reversed, right? And I think sometimes I think each generation builds on the last.
Mm.
And again, seeing from the place my mom came from and seeing how far she's come in shifting the narrative, um, I'm really proud of her. And I feel like we've gotten to a place where I can share that. I can share, like, I see how far you've come, and that's wonderful. And also, it's funny to teach her.
Mm.
And I think my, I think my spiritual life, my relationship to myself has gifted me with a deeper perspective that I can share with her. And that's not to say it hasn't come without its challenges, because I think sometimes it's hard for my parents to learn from me. I don't think I'm an authority over them, but I definitely see my own evolution, and that it has gotten me to a different place. I would say a place hopefully a little more awake and evolved. And again, it's not a comparison game, but my mom and I continue to have conversations, and um, yeah, I see that she is changing, but it's still delicate. And I think my willingness to challenge kindly, just by asking questions, oh, mom, where does that belief come from? Or if I were to turn that around and ask you the question, how does that feel in your body? Um, or again, changing the narrative from looking to feeling. I'm trying to change the idea of, like, our bodies are for living, not looking. Our bodies are for moving in the world. They allow us to do something. It's just the vessel. And bringing her attention to that, and finding ways of feeling gratitude for what her body is capable of doing. Because at 73, she is in incredible health. Like, she is, and she is, I will say, also physically a very beautiful person, just objectively speaking. And yeah, I'm always just trying to draw her awareness back to the feeling. How do you feel? And reminding her again that our bodies are listening, and we can impact the way our cells respond and communicate and express through our mind's beliefs. And it will also be the journey of her life, for
Mm,
sure.
mm. I think
And
if your mom also really listens deeply, she must be must be proud of you and value you so much.
well, yeah, sorry, I guess that's coming back to the
Yeah.
question.
It
I got a
doesn't
little
matter. No, no.
lost,
I mean,
but
it's both ways, but I think I think as we are from the same generation, and correct me if I'm wrong, if you see it differently, but I don't think so. I have the feeling that women in our generation with children, I think we've become probably much more open and have started to realize much more what the children are showing us, are mirroring us, and therefore that we shouldn't be implanting our beliefs, even though that can happen. Because I mean, I think the generation, of our parents, I mean, if they've seen or they come just from after war, I think there's a lot that has played there, and I can see that, especially from within my family, because my grandma was, for instance, Jewish in the Netherlands, and I've seen how that has, now, kind of maybe 10 years ago, that it became clear for me how that has impacted my father, and therefore me and my brother, and me as a girl growing up. But I think that we're probably in that generation too, that we've started shifting that and how we relate to our children.
yeah,
Hmm.
which is wonderful. I mean, I don't think we did not really understand childhood psychology for a really long time. And, the war generation was deep in survival mode, and then it was repair mode after that. And so I think there was also, honestly, a real obligation to just even have kids in the first place without giving it a lot of thought about the impact that you would have on a human being. And bringing it back to your question, I know my mom is very proud of me. I know that. And both my parents are, and they tell me all the time, and I have always felt very loved. And I think now, as I as I'm out in the world and I'm really trying to shift some paradigms in my own small little way, like the small influence that I have, really trying to use that influence for good and to, wake people up. Um, I know that they're very proud of me, and I know my mom is very proud of my own journey, witnessing me come from, yeah, this place of deep brokenness with my relationship to myself to being like so strong in myself, because that's the real triumph in my mind. And I think she can see the value in that now as well.
Mm, good. So there's still so much I want to ask you. I think one
Great.
one of the one of the big questions is I think it was in no, 26, I think in 2023, because I was on the sofa for 5 weeks because I had a fall and I couldn't walk. And then there was this interview with you on a podcast in which you talk, because for a long time you have been living more plant-based, and then
Hmm.
things happening in your body, you were listening to your body saying that you needed to include again animal products, right?
Yeah.
um can you share what that experience was like emotionally, physically, and really how it challenged you, and really also your beliefs before that? Because I think in general you've never really labeled things so much.
Hmm. Yeah,
Yeah.
I've never labeled my diet. I
Yeah.
mean, when I started sharing recipes online, they were vegetarian and vegan because I really wanted everyone to eat them. Um, it wasn't because I was subscribing to an ideology, or so I thought, Haya. Or so I thought. Um, I became vegetarian at 16, and then I was fully vegan for quite a lot of the 24 years. Um, and yeah, I had a major spinal injury that was supposedly only to be helped with surgery. And I had a feeling deep down that I could do it on my own without an invasive procedure, because I also knew that the surgery itself, which was spinal fusion, I knew that that would also change my life and my mobility and my spine forever. And I was only 35 when it happened. And I mean, I was in the best shape of my life when that happened. And I just felt like I got to give it a shot. And ironically, a lot of the people who I went to nutrition school with were coming from a place of needing to heal and needing answers and needing some kind of system to heal. And I just went because I was interested in it. I didn't have some like deep healing story that, foods had really, I mean, other than wake up my brain, turn my life on for the first time. I, yeah, I felt really, I was happy for those people, but I felt really disconnected to their reason for being there, which was so interesting. So suddenly I had a real reason for putting the nutrition to work. And I tried healing from the outside in for a really long time. I had a lot of different specialists and practitioners. And my Chinese medicine doctor, who I had been seeing for a few years, he said, you need more, you need a deeper form of nourishment here. And one of the things I learned in nutrition school was that there's a breakdown diet, which is wonderful for cleansing, and then there's a build up diet, which is really what you need for healing. And a breakdown diet is a plant-based diet. It's incredible as a protocol. I felt amazing. I will also say that. I mean, 23 years of feeling so good. And I think this was also the stage of my life. I needed a lot of carbohydrates. Um, I was eating, I mean, just so much fiber. My digestion was amazing. So none of this is to say that I take back what I said, because I think all those years, I mean, I felt amazing, and it was an incredibly creative time in my life because I was also recipe developing for my cookbooks, for my blog, various different media outlets and whatnot. So it was great. But when this healing was not taking place in my body, when this injury would not move, Um, my Chinese doctor kept saying, you really need more protein, more minerals if you're going to heal this. And I was so resistant. I mean, every time he said it, I saw him every 3 weeks for many years. I would just cry and cry. I mean, I was so upset. I was so angry at him. I think I was angry because I knew deep down he was right. And I was like, how can I do that? I have built an entire career on making vegetarian recipes and also touting this way of living. So it's going to completely, um, yeah, what's the word I'm looking for? Um, yeah, I can't think of the word, but
Disrupt in a way, yeah.
well, it's just going to make me look like I don't know what I'm talking about. Like
Mhm.
I was misleading people for all those years when again, I felt incredible until I didn't, until I really needed to eat a build up diet.
Mm.
Um, and so I very quietly behind the scenes, um, again, this is after 2 years of him insisting that he's like, this is not going to heal until you start at least drinking some bone broth and incorporating some more protein into your diet. Um, I very slowly started incorporating some broth, and then I started eating chicken. The first chicken I ate was like, it was euphoric. It really was. And I could feel immediately. I felt it immediately, the difference. And I thought, okay, well, I'll just eat chicken. And then I went to visit my very, very like my sister, not my real sister, but we're sisters, in Sweden.
Mhm.
And she was a very strict vegan as long as I had known her. Strict vegan, like would she had chickens, like laying chickens, would not eat their eggs. I mean, and whenever I would go to her house and I would like a little butter on my toast, I just felt so judged. So she was very extreme. And she did a complete 180 and then started eating, I mean, not just like a chicken here and there, but like wild boar and deer and buffalo. And like, I mean, it was so wild. And I went to stay with her. And this was really at the beginning of my own transformation. And I just trusted her so deeply because she had gone on this journey and I felt so identified with her. We first connected over food and over raw veganism, as a matter of fact. And she was a recipe developer as well. And so it was such a trip for me to see her eating like bison when, we originally connected over lettuce. So it was a bit of a trip, but with her guidance, like she literally held my hand, eating sausage. And I felt great. And my body, I mean, some people I know when they transition from eating mostly plants to eating meat, their digestion can suffer. They can just have a period of time where it's really difficult. There was nothing. I mean, my body was just so thrilled about it. And energetically, whoa, again, it was not unlike that moment on the farm where I felt awake. I felt like I woke up again. It was like, this is so weird. And again, it's very confusing because I was like, how did I wake up, eating a plant-based diet and now I'm eating meat and I feel like there's another layer coming off and I'm like, I'm back. Um, anyway, so remarkable. And I think that was another turning point for me when I got home from that trip. I started reaching out to all the local farms around me and I live in a rural place and I feel so lucky. I have access to the best meat in the country, best meat, eggs, dairy, everything. And I've made friends with all of them. And I know the name of every single person who's, raising the animals. Um, One of them who I did interview for my membership site called Grow, who was a former vegetarian. And he started raising animals in a regenerative way, regenerative for the earth. And this was a huge piece that I was missing in my vegan ideology was that if you are going to grow plants, you have to have animals to do that. And what his mission is, he doesn't call himself an animal raiser. He is growing soil. He's changing the ecology of the land that he is on, and animals are the byproduct of creating soil. And this was a light bulb moment for me. When he started talking about his own journey and how, I mean, everything, our whole life, and something we really don't think about on a daily basis, our whole life depends on soil, the soil health. And it is so depleted. You know, we can drive through the countryside and see, you know, all the beautiful farmlands. In his mind, it is a desert, it is a wasteland. And it's because of monocropping, of not letting fields fallow. Like nothing we do agriculturally in the industrial model is natural, none of it. And the way people used to farm was in connection, animals and plants in connection with one another, and the importance of that. And so he is a soil farmer, and that is where I go and get a lot of my meat. It's from him. And it's Ever Meadow Farms on Instagram, and he has drone shots of the land that he is regenerating. And it is the most beautiful thing to see barren, deserted farmland turning into lush pastures, meadows, thriving with biodiversity and natural indigenous species. Like the health is coming back to the land, and that is his mission in life. And the animals are a byproduct of that. Like it's so beautiful. And so there's been so many people along my path that have really helped me wake up to truly holistic living and a truly holistic way of eating in connection with nature. And it cannot be plants in isolation. It does not work that way. And so I feel like, again, the eating of meat, I mean, it has absolutely helped heal my body. I have done what every single expert I spoke to said it was impossible to heal this injury. It was so severe. And I did it. I did it through diet, of course, through nervous system regulation. That was a huge piece. I'd love to talk about that more if you want to hear. Um, Pleasure. I healed my body with pleasure. And eating meat was a big part of that. And the letting go of ideology I had to do to let that pleasure into my life was so huge. It was deeply spiritual. And I'm so grateful to everyone who has helped open my eyes to that reality. And I still eat a very plant-based diet. I mean, again, I think the term plant-based has been co-opted. To me, that means based on plants. It doesn't mean, vegan. Vegan is another thing. It's also, veganism is very political, right? Um, my diet is still very rich in plants. I say plant rich now. Yeah, it's a plant-rich diet. I still believe in the power of plants. There are things we cannot get from animals, we can only get in plants, and there's things in plants we can't get from animals. Animals, yeah, you know what I'm trying to say, vice versa. And yeah, I believe holistic eating really is about eating from all of the food groups and um, not restricting. It's funny how a vegan vegetarian diet is often not seen as restrictive, and I think it is. And I think it serves a purpose. I think it's like any kind of extreme diet. Like we could take the ketogenic diet, for instance, which as a short-term protocol is life-saving for people. But it is not meant to be a diet forever. And I think vegetarian and veganism is so amazing for some people at certain times of their life with certain conditions. It absolutely has its place. At this point in my life, I don't think I can say with total confidence that it is a lifetime way of eating and being. And I think there's room for balance. And that looks different for every single body. And that's where the listening comes in and the intuition comes in. And I think what's really difficult about getting messages from the outside is that we start to really think and feel in only one way that is so powerful that we stop really listening to ourselves. And it's very hard to have hundreds of thousands of people watching what you eat because it really locks you in. Like I felt so unable to change because of disappointing people. I know that I had been sharing this message that I felt so strongly about for so many years. And if I were to change that, it would discredit. That was the word I was trying to find earlier. It would discredit everything I had shared. But once I finally let go of that and really dropped into my body, I knew what the answer was. It was very clear. And so, what a beautiful learning. Another one. What a powerful lesson. And so, just trying to continue to navigate my food choices from that inner knowing, despite the judgment of others, which of course I have received lots of. That takes real guts. That takes real confidence and courage to be like, well, I'm going to disappoint a lot of people and I'm going to receive a lot of judgment and negativity, and I'm going to do it anyway because
Mm.
it's for me. And I also hope that for everybody else. I want that for everyone in life too.
I hope that they have seen in the end, or they have understood what you've actually been doing.
Yes, yes. And I think because, when you listen to that podcast, I did frame it. I'm like, I am trying to heal from something.
Mm.
And it was not an easy decision. It wasn't like just one day to the next, I'm just going to eat steak. I was so conscientious about it and sourcing these products and, um, gosh, I'm in such deep reverence to the lives of these animals that I am taking. I know that. Um, but they have given me life and I do not take it for granted. It makes me emotional. It really does. Because yeah, I also see the way that yeah, I don't know. I'm a deep carer and lover of animals. I really am. I think that's another reason why this was so hard because it's like, how can I eat them if I love them so much? But they have truly saved my life. Like I have my life back.
Mm.
And every time I partake in their life, I am on my knees with gratitude. Every time. Yeah. And I think we can have both. I think we can love this earth that we're on, and we can love the animals here, and we can also choose to live the way literally like what got us here, what got humanity here is from taking those lives and from our species evolving through the animals' evolution and their nourishment. Yeah, and I think as long as we recognize that, if we can take an active role in knowing the people, if we're not, raising these animals ourselves, but just, really taking a role in going out to the farm and meeting them, getting as connected as possible, if that's possible. I know for most of us it's not, but even just saying a prayer, even just touching those muscles and sending a prayer and saying thank you, it can really shift it. And I say to people who come to my cooking classes that your whole life can be a ceremony and deeply steeped in ritual if you just allow it. And I think, eating anything, we have this opportunity to have an experience that's beyond just the food and just the cooking. It can really be connected to spirit. And I think just acknowledging the spirit of these beings, even if it's a carrot, I mean, you can talk to the carrot spirit too. I think, yeah, I think that's important. Just to acknowledge how lucky we are to eat, honestly. Yeah, whatever it is.
This is something completely different. I'm sometimes wondering because, if I see you busy with the food and so on, and what you share, for instance, on Instagram and all the meals. And I think, how can she eat so much, or it seems like so much and so often? Is
Yeah, I eat a lot of food.
how can you digest it? Is that just because you're so deeply connected to yourself and to
I
nature?
guess so. I'm just eating. I I listen to my hunger. I mean, I'm also a very active person. I'd say I use up what I eat. Yeah, I I love eating. I love the experience of I love everything about it. And yeah, I definitely eat a lot and I use it.
Yeah.
I don't eat and then, sit on the couch. I'm using it. I feel like calories need to be looked at as fuel for living. And I'm very preoccupied with the nutrients in food, like what it's giving me. And the food I eat is so nutrient dense. Um, which is why I eat less of heavily refined foods and heavily processed foods that give us a lot of calories without a lot of nutrients in them. Um, and that's not to say I don't ever eat those foods. I love chips and I love cookies and I love sweets. And I will eat those in an intuitive way. But yeah, the majority of my food is deeply nourishing. And I eat a lot of it because I need it to live the life that I want to live. And that requires a ton of energy, both physically and mentally. So yeah, it's so nice to get to a place where yeah, I've never counted calories. I've never looked at the macronutrient content of food. I'm aware of ratios, but it's not in a yeah, it's not an awareness that holds me back or makes me feel like I'm policing myself or I'm judging myself. And, that also looks different for everyone. Some people really find that the control is necessary and maybe even for a certain period of their life. But I think I think the disorder these days is not utilizing the calories that we're given. I think that our lifestyles have adapted in such a way that we're very sedentary and we're sitting a lot and driving a lot. And, even though I have a job that keeps me on a computer a lot of the time, I really balance that out. I'm outside as many hours of the day as I can be. I walk all the time. I'm gardening a lot in the sauna. So yeah, I need a lot of energy to live, and I get to eat intuitively based on the day. And yeah, and um, I think hunger is such an important vital sign. I see a lot of these drugs that are coming out that take away our hunger and makes me, and I say this without judgment because I know those are also life-saving drugs for a lot of people. But I think removing our appetite from our life is not the right direction that we should be going in because it's another huge guide of our rhythms, and it's not something to be feared. Our appetite is connecting us to our needs, and I think silencing that. I think collectively as a culture, we need to really look at what we are silencing when we take our appetite away, and our relationship to something that feels perhaps out of control, and other ways we can approach getting that to a place where we feel comfortable with that voice inside of us.
And it's also appetite for life that comes with that.
Absolutely. I know that with these drugs, people also lose their motivation. They lose their aliveness. And I think that's, again, coming back to the way we are in the world and what our purpose is. And quieting that voice, I think that's the most dangerous thing of all. When we stop feeling our connection to our purpose and why we're here. And our appetite is a huge part of that. Yeah.
I really hope that many women are going to listen to this episode,
Mm.
right? Because sometimes you kind of think for yourself that which is true, that you've made particular steps and you've come probably again closer to something. And I think this, for me, speaking with all these women on this podcast, I don't want to say I can take something from everyone, but everyone is showing me again, actually again, another kind of layer. Um, and just listening to you and saying, how you were judged so much, by how you had to heal yourself and the decisions that you had to make. I think this is something that women should really listen to, because I think it I I think it plays for everyone, and it's probably needed for everyone. In different ways. It might not necessarily be related to nutrition, but I think it's a general lesson.
Yeah, I think so. I see this desire for people to, I see this desire for sameness
Mm,
right now,
mm,
especially amongst women, and this desire to look like each other and all these ways that we can, yeah, sort of mimic each other. Like, have you noticed celebrities looking more and more alike?
mm,
It's so scary to me.
mm,
Yeah, I think that's a reflection of, again, people being afraid of not belonging. So, like, the closer we look to one another, the more we can identify, okay, like you're in the club, you're in the club. Um, Having this idea that if we're different, then we don't belong. I don't know. I also think that's very dangerous because
mm.
it requires a lot of manipulation to look like each other
Yeah.
and a lot of money, a lot of effort. And again, coming back to the importance of our uniqueness and our own individual voice, because I think if we're trying to look like each other on the outside, we're also trying to look like each other on the inside. And
Mm,
we stop listening to ourselves and our intuition, which is, especially as women, that is our greatest gift.
mm, mm.
So I I hope this resonates with someone listening out there that
Oh, absolutely, for sure with me.
thank you.
Let's just go, because I mean it's a long conversation, which is absolutely fascinating. I love listening to you, and I just want to have one more last question. So
Yeah,
try to
yeah.
to answer this one, and maybe a bit shorter. But also because I mean we've gone a bit deep there and maybe emotional, just to kind of bring love into it. Because you followed the love of your life, I think, to Copenhagen.
Yeah.
Right, yet. And you lived in Denmark for a long time, but there your work that you were doing wasn't recognized, your diploma wasn't recognized. But you found your way in as, again, listening deeply to yourself. And you basically kind of proved to everyone, or it's not proven, it just showed everyone what you can do, right? If you're really deeply connected. Is there just something you kind of shortly want to kind of say about that? How that was also for you, also just being in another country and for really kind of.
Yeah, I mean, such a gift to meet my incredible husband because yeah, that journey across the world to a culture, a country, a language, I
Mm.
had never, I just never even considered it before. Um, and we're still so deeply in love and we have a beautiful life together and he's my greatest teacher. He really is. Gosh, what can I say about my time in Denmark? I mean, I got there and there was no holistic nutrition because people in Denmark are generally very healthy. Everyone cooks. Everybody cooks. Like, the bottom line, like, yeah, point blank, period. Everybody cooks. People are very connected to their families. It's a very familial culture. I would say there's so much in the country that is in support of the family unit and of the community around the family. Like it's very different than the way I grew up. And I I really did not know what to do with my life because here I am with this degree and I can't use it. I can't get insurance to practice it because it literally does not exist as a profession. And so I tried to think about what I could do instead. And I knew like I was curious about food at that time. I mean, I became really interested in food and cooking because of my nutrition education. And I was particularly interested in the synergistic effects of food and how ingredients worked together to like make the food more nourishing. And I think from a vegetarian and vegan perspective, that's really important as we combine ingredients to sort of mimic what we could otherwise get from meat. So that was very fascinating to me. And so I thought, well, maybe I'll get a job at a restaurant or a cafe and I could maybe cook and just bide my time, like figure out what it is I wanted to do until maybe I could get a job as a nutritionist. And so I remember cycling around and I had like my little phrases in Danish that I could say, but if they responded in Danish, I would be like, I don't know. So little Sarah with her CV going around and being like, saying my little Danish phrase and then switching to English and saying, I'm looking for a job and this is my education. And people in the cafes were like, you seem overqualified to work here. And I'm like, well, I just need a job. Obviously, I don't speak the language yet, and I need a place where I can practice that and, learn a little bit. And I am very curious about food, and I would love to learn how to cook more. And one place said yes, and they said it's on the condition that you cook meat, that we need a meat cook. And, I was so many years into my vegetarian eating at that point, but I was desperate for a job. I also didn't know a single person in Denmark besides this man that I had given up my entire life for. I was very lonely. I mean, I love him, but that's not enough for me. I need I need friends, and I especially needed female friends. And so I said yes to this job, and I was taught how to cook all these meat dishes, like very classic Danish, like frikadelle, if anyone's listening. And that's like a meatball, a classic meatball, and kylling and lasagna, all these things. And I was taught once how to make everything, and then I had to replicate it. And I learned how to cook by smell because I wouldn't eat anything, I wouldn't taste the food. And within about a couple of weeks, and getting feedback from the people who were eating it, they were like, this is the best lasagna I've ever had, or, this roast chicken is absolutely amazing. And I realized I had a bit of a knack for cooking, despite the fact I wasn't even tasting it. And it was such a funny experience because I was so stubborn, was never going to eat the food, but I was like, I think I might have an instinct for this. Like, lo and behold, because I never thought I would be a chef. I never thought I would like cook professionally, but that's what I ended up doing. And the more I learned and the more feedback I was getting from people, like I remember this one day, this guy came in. I was working in a very alternative place, I will say, which is there's a little town within Copenhagen called Christiania, and it's known as Freetown, and it's a self-governing community of hippies. And that's the only place I could get a job as a foreigner. And anyway, it attracted a lot of backpackers and transient folks and people. And this guy came in one day and, he had his meal and the kitchen was sort of open to the dining room as well. And he came over and he said, did you make this food? And I said, yes, I did. And he got down on his knees and he lifted up his hands and he said, I haven't felt the love in food in so long. And he got emotional. He was like, whatever you did to this food, I can feel the vibration of your heart in it. And I can feel how much love you poured into this. And it wasn't just delicious, but I feel like it touched me on a deep, deep level. And, it's funny because I wasn't eating meat at the time, but I would pray over the meat every time I cooked it. And I would really pour my love and intention into it. And I was I was just so touched by his response. And I was like, I'm so glad you like it because I didn't taste it. And he was like, what do you mean? I said, well, I'm a vegetarian. He couldn't believe it. And he's like, well, there's something about the way that you've worked with this food that really has touched my soul. And I thank you so much. And I would love to come back. And I was like, okay, great. And then, word got out and people started lining up for my meatballs. And it was just like the weirdest thing because I was connected to the food, of course, but in this kind of arm's length away, at least from a flavor and taste perspective. But I knew that like by smelling the ragu I was cooking that it needed oregano and salt and black pepper and whatever else. And so it was such an interesting journey. So then when I finally had proven myself, they upgraded me, they promoted me to salad chef and doing vegetables. And that's when things really took off for me because I was able to taste the food but I had also gained a lot of this like mm, interesting connection with the food without tasting it. So I was able to understand it in a really cool way. And then the blog at the same time, because I was blogging before I moved to Denmark, but the blog started taking off because the restaurant I was working at didn't have a menu. Every chef, when they came in for the day, they had to make up the entire menu right there on the spot, just based on what we had in the fridge. And so I started inventing a lot of things and like really experimenting, and I had free reign of all these amazing ingredients. And yeah, that's when things started to really shift for me. And then my dream was to work in this vegetarian restaurant, which was just down the street. And I kept going and taking in my CV and saying, I'm working down the street at Mondstadt and I really, or sorry, at Glenstein, and I really want to work here. It's my dream. And they got a lot of applications and they wanted to make sure that people were serious, and so they said you just have to keep coming back. And so I just did. I kept going back, and eventually they said, all right, you can do a trial shift. We see that you're serious. And that place was another level up because we probably served 300 or 400 people on a busy day. And the sheer amount of food that kicked my butt. I mean, I would come home from working there and I would flop on the bed and pass out. It was so exhausting and actually so stressful. But I was making the food that I really wanted to, and I learned so much there. And eventually, then uh, started managing a raw vegan restaurant in Copenhagen. And I was working at all three places at the same time, which was wild. Um, then I let go of the first place and I was just working at the two. And then around that time as well, Noma was the best restaurant in the world in Copenhagen. And I thought, I mean, if I live in the city with the best restaurant in the world, I got to go there. And so, yeah, I went to them too and I said, I want to work with you in some capacity. And it took some time, but they finally said yes.
Wow.
And that was my last professional kitchen job, was working on the line there. And yeah, it was a really good learning experience for me. And it also showed me that I never want to work in professional kitchens again.
Okay.
So,
Okay, Sarah, you've
yeah,
made me very hungry, so we're going to wrap up.
great.
What would be in two phrases, your best advice to women?
My best advice to women. Derive your self-worth from inside of yourself, from deep within your heart. That's where it comes from, and that's where it should live. And if you can guide your life from that place, then you'll be doing great. And hopefully you inspire other women along the way to do that. Like I think when we can live in our truth, we shine out and we give other people permission to do the same. And oh, I would tell women to rest more. Rest, rest, be quiet, give yourself space, and don't murder yourself. Don't be so self-sacrificing. Don't feel guilty about rest. Women need way more rest than our culture even, allows, promotes, encourages. And um, again, that our value really lies in our intuition, and we need rest to feel connected to that. So rest more, please.
Sarah, you're such an inspiration. You say you hope that the other women will inspire everyone, but you're such a beautiful inspiration, and I'm really happy that you were here on my podcast. I told one of my boys, because I've got your book, My New Roots, on the shelf. When we moved from Italy to Tanzania, we could only move with 8 suitcases for 4 people, and I managed to put that book in.
Oh, wow. That means so much to hear. Thank
But I've
you.
got them here, so every time I'm looking at it, you lighten a lot up. So thank you so much
Well,
for being here.
thank you for having me, and thank you for all your very thoughtful questions. And I've really enjoyed this conversation. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining us on the Colors of Womanhood. Whether you found a piece of yourself in today's story or it opened a new perspective, I hope it reminded you that your path, in all its colors, is valid, sacred, and worth honoring. If you're curious to explore your energy levels and reconnect with your inner energetic potential, I invite you to download Energize In, a free resource designed to give you a gentle yet powerful taster of what's possible when you tune into your feminine vitality. You'll find the link in the show notes. If this episode moved you, feel free to share it with a sister, a friend, or someone navigating their own womanhood. And if you feel called, leave a review or message. I love hearing what resonates. Until next time, keep listening to your body, nurturing your spirit, and embracing the full spectrum of your womanhood wherever you are in the world.